He had one wish. He wanted to get married in the church. Every time I visited his community, he would say the same thing. Father, I want to marry in the church. His name is Luis. He lives with Donna Maria in a faraway riverine community in the Amazon called Mariapó. Mariapó is not close. To get there, you have to travel by boat for hours. You pass the river, the forest, the sky, and many hidden places that most people will never see. But God sees those places, and God sees the people who live there. Some time ago, when I visited Mariapó, so Luis told me about this desire. At first, I listened, but then on another visit, he said it again, and on another visit again. Father, I want to get married in the church. He did not forget. He did not give up. That touched me because he was not asking for money. He was not asking for a big favor. He was asking for a sacrament. He wanted his union with Donna Maria to be blessed by God. And that desire stayed in his heart. But then something happened. So Luis became very sick. And not only that, he also lost his sight. That changed everything. Before, we had said the wedding will happen this year. But when he became sick and lost his sight, I felt in my heart that we should not delay too much. This was not just another wedding. This was an elderly man who had been asking for this for a long time. This was a woman who had stood by his side. This was a couple who wanted to bring their life before God. So I spoke with our parish pastoral team. I told them the story. I told them about Sir Luis and Donna Maria. I told them how he kept asking for the wedding. I told them about his sickness. I told them that he had lost his sight. And I said, if we are going to do this, let us do it well. Let us make it beautiful for them. Not expensive, not luxurious, but beautiful, with love. And the team understood immediately. They did not say, let us just go and do the ceremony quickly. No. They said in their own way, this couple deserves a beautiful day. And that made me very happy. Because the elderly deserve love. The poor deserve dignity. People in faraway communities deserve beauty too. A wedding in the Amazon should not be treated as less important just because the place is simple. So we prepared. Then the day came. It was a Saturday. Very early in the morning, we boarded the parish boat and began the journey to Mariapó. The journey took hours. As the boat moved on the river, I looked at the sky. The Amazon sky was beautiful that day, white, bright, peaceful. Around us was the forest, green, silent, strong. The river was carrying us deeper into the Amazon. And as we traveled, I kept thinking, we are not just going to do a ceremony. We are going to fulfill a promise. We are going to bring joy to an elderly couple. We are going to bring the tenderness of the church to a hidden place. That journey itself felt like a prayer. The sound of the boat, the movement of the water, the beauty of the sky, the forest beside us, the silence of the river. Sometimes in the Amazon, creation itself helps you to pray. And I thought of Sir Luis and Donna Maria. Were they already waiting? Were they excited? Was Donna Maria getting ready? Was Sir Luis asking if the boat had arrived? I imagined their joy. And I also thought about something simple. Love makes the journey. Love wakes up early. Love enters the boat. Love carries food. Love carries decorations. Love travels for hours. Love says, this person matters. And that is what we were doing. We were going because they mattered. When we finally arrived in Mariapó, so Luis and Donna Maria were waiting. And they were so happy. You could see it on their faces. They had been waiting for us, waiting for the church, waiting for the sacrament, waiting for that special day. And when I saw them, I said to myself, we were right to come. The place was simple, very simple. It was not a big wedding hall. It was not a rich place. It was not decorated like weddings you see in cities. But then the parish team began to work. Little by little, they changed the place. They decorated, they arranged things, they prepared the place, they made it beautiful. And I was deeply moved watching them because those decorations were not just decorations. They were saying to the couple, your story matters, your wedding matters, your joy matters. You are not forgotten. You are worth this effort. That is very important. Sometimes people think beauty is only for the rich, but that is not true. Beauty is also for the poor. Beauty is also for the elderly. Beauty is also for those who live far away. Beauty is also for those whom the world does not notice. That day in Mariapó, this elderly couple was being honored. And that was beautiful. While the team prepared the place, I spent time with Sir Luis and Donna Maria. There were still some final things to do. I spoke with them. I helped them with the final preparation. I heard their confession. We signed the remaining documents. Those quiet moments before a sacrament are very special because The public sees the wedding, the rings, the clothes, the smiles, the celebration. But before that, there is the heart, there is the soul, there is prayer, there's preparation, there's the desire to stand before God with peace. And I could see that they were ready. Donna Maria was also beautifully prepared. She looked happy. She looked lovely. She had makeup. She looked like a bride. And that touched me because old age should not mean the end of beauty. Old age should not mean the end of joy. Old age should not mean the end of dreaming. That day, Donna Maria was not just an elderly woman in a small community. She was the bride. And her joy was beautiful to see. Then the celebration began. The readings were proclaimed. The word of God was said. The people gathered. The wedding began. As I stood there, I felt that this was not an ordinary moment. This was sacred. Here was an elderly couple in a hidden community of the Amazon bringing their love before God. There was no glamour, no luxury, no big stage, no worldly perfection. There was sickness. There was old age. There was simplicity. There was poverty. There was distance. But there was also faith. And where there is faith, grace can shine. Then came the vows. That was one of the most powerful moments. After all the waiting, after all the asking, after the sickness, after the long journey, after the preparation, the couple finally stood before God and the church. They exchanged their promises. And I thought, this is not just a ceremony. This is a dream coming true. This is a desire finally being fulfilled. So Luis had asked for this again and again. Now it was happening. Donna Maria stood there with him, and together they placed their union before God. It was simple, but it was powerful. Then came the blessing of the rings. Rings are small, but they speak a lot. They speak of love. They speak of fidelity. They speak of commitment. They speak of a promise. And that day, those rings had a special meaning because they were not being exchanged by a young couple just beginning life. They were being exchanged by an elderly couple who had already lived many things. They had known years. They had known struggle. They had known sickness. They had known weakness. And still, they wanted God's blessing. That is beautiful. Because love is not only for the young. Love is not only for easy days. Love is not only for good health. Love is also for old age. Love is also for difficult days. Love is also for moments when the body is weak, but the heart still says yes. Then came Holy Communion. And for me, that made the day complete. Because at the center of a Christian wedding is not only the couple, at the center is Christ. The Lord was there. The Eucharist was there. The grace of God was there. And I felt very grateful. At the end, the document was signed. That may sound like a small thing, just paperwork. But even that was moving because those signatures meant at last after waiting, at last after asking, at last after illness, at last after the long journey, at last the wedding had happened. And you could see the joy in their faces. Sometimes there were smiles, sometimes there were tears, but the joy was clear. They were happy, deeply happy. And when I saw their faces, I remembered why mission matters. This is why we travel. This is why we organize. This is why we serve. This is why the church must go to the people. Because somewhere in a hidden community, someone is waiting for grace. After the ceremony, something very joyful happened. Donna Maria threw the bouquet of flowers and the young people ran to catch it. That moment made everyone smile. After the seriousness of the vows, after the tears, after the prayers, there was laughter, there was movement, there was joy. An elderly bride in a remote Amazonian community throwing a bouquet while young people struggled to catch it. It was beautiful. It showed that holiness is not sadness. Faith is not sadness. The church is not only silence and seriousness. There is also joy, there is laughter, there is celebration, there is life. After that, there was food, there was entertainment. The parish had prepared enough food for everyone. People ate, people talked, people laughed, people celebrated together. And the joy of the couple became the joy of the community. That's one thing I love about the Amazon communities. When something important happens, people share it together. It is not only my joy, it becomes our joy. And that day, the whole community shared in the joy of Sir Luis and Donna Maria. When we were leaving Maria Paul, the parish team felt very happy. Tired, yes, but happy because we knew it had been worth it. The journey had been worth it. The preparation had been worth it. The effort had been worth it. It was a job well done. But more than that, it was a grace well received. That wedding taught me many things. It taught me that we should not postpone what matters before God. If there is something you need to put right, do not keep saying one day. If you need confession, go. If you need to return to the church, return. If you need to regularize your marriage, begin the process. If you need to forgive someone, start. If you need to begin again with God, do not wait forever. So Luis kept asking. He did not let the desire die. And because he kept asking, that day finally came. The wedding also taught me again that everyone has dignity. The elderly have dignity. The sick have dignity. The poor have dignity. People in faraway communities have dignity. The world may not see them, but God sees them. The world may not know their names, but God knows their names. Maria Paul may be far from the city, but it is not far from God. So Luis and Donna Maria may never be famous, but their wedding was seen by heaven. And I believe Christ was there. I believe grace was there. I believe that in that simple place, God did something very beautiful. This is missionary life in the Amazon. It is not always easy. Sometimes it's tiring. Sometimes it is frustrating. Sometimes the distances are long. Sometimes the river journey is difficult. But then there are days like this, days when you understand again why the mission matters. A boat journey through the Amazon, a simple community, an elderly man who kept asking for a church wedding, a woman who stood beside him, a parish team that chose love, a humble space made beautiful. Vows, rings, communion, tears, smiles, food, laughter, a bouquet thrown into the air. And you say, yes, this is why we are here. Years from now, when I remember my mission in the Amazon, I know I will remember this day. I will remember the river. I will remember the sky. I will remember the forest. I will remember Maria Paul. I will remember Sir Luis and Donna Maria waiting for us. I will remember the joy on their faces. I will remember the parish team walking with love. I will remember the vows. I will remember the bouquet. I will remember the feeling in my heart as we left. And I will remember this simple truth. No place is too hidden for God. No person is too old to be loved. No desire for God should be ignored. And no act of love is wasted. So please pray for Sir Luis and Donna Maria. Pray for the riverine communities of the Amazon. Pray for missionaries. Pray for all those who carry a good desire in their heart but keep postponing it. And maybe as you watch this story, ask yourself, what is that one thing I have been postponing before God? Maybe this is the time to begin. God bless you.